I always knew there was something my family was hiding from me, but never, not even in my darkest dreams, did I imagine it would cut so deep. You see, I am a grandmother, a mother, a widow who gave everything for her family. Every corner of this house, this old English home with its creaking floors and ivy-wrapped windows, carries the weight of my sacrifices. Yet, one evening, as the rain tapped against the glass and the wind howled through the chimney, I discovered the truth. My children, my own flesh and blood, had planned a grand luxury vacation without telling me. A holiday in the sun, with white sands, golden skies, and laughter echoing across the sea. But they left me behind in the shadows, as if I were a burden, as if my presence was an embarrassment. I found out not because they told me, oh no, they never dared. I discovered it in the most unexpected way. A small piece of paper, carelessly dropped between the cushions of my old floral sofa. A glossy brochure of the very resort they had chosen. It wasn't just any resort. No, it was my resort. The one they never knew I owned. And as I sat there in silence, the thunder rolling above me, I felt a strange kind of fire rise within my chest. Not of sadness, not of weakness, but of resolve. Before I take you further, my dear ones, I must ask, if you've ever felt betrayed by the ones you love, if you've ever tasted the bitterness of being forgotten, do me a kindness. Like this video, share it so that no grandmother, no mother, no soul who sacrificed their youth for their family is ever left unheard. And if you've just joined me here, do subscribe, because this story is only beginning, and I promise you, what comes next will leave you trembling as much as I did that night. The brochure smelled of sea salt, of promises whispered in secret. I stared at the glossy image of the grand white villas, overlooking the turquoise waters of Spain's coast, and for a long moment, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just a vacation. It was a celebration. There were notes scribbled in my daughter-in-law's neat handwriting along the margins. Private dinner by the ocean. Spa for the ladies. Dad would have loved this. And that last line struck me like a knife. Dad would have loved this. Yes, my late husband would have loved it. He adored the ocean. And yet, here they were, invoking his memory while shutting me out. His widow, his partner. I held that paper in my trembling hands, and as the clock ticked louder and louder in my empty parlor, I felt time itself mocking me. My eyes wandered to the faded photograph on the mantelpiece. My husband, smiling in his old navy uniform, his hand gently resting on my shoulder. I could almost hear him whispering, "Don't let them forget who you are." And so I didn't. The truth is, my children never knew the full story of my youth. They thought I was just an old woman, tucked away in this creaky house, clutching memories and knitting shawls. But I had a past, one that I never shared, one that carried secrets as deep as the ocean itself. And one of those secrets was the resort. Yes, the very resort they thought was nothing more than a destination on a brochure. I owned it. Not just a share, not just a piece, the entire resort. It was my legacy, my husband's parting gift, the fruit of years of sacrifice and quiet strength. I remember the day he surprised me with it. It was our anniversary, decades ago. He had taken my hand and led me to the cliffs above the sea, where the villas gleamed like pearls against the horizon. One day, he said, his voice breaking with both pride and sorrow, "This will be yours. For the times you gave up your dreams to hold this family together, for the nights you stitched clothes when we had no money, the mornings you went hungry, so our children could eat. This is my gift to you, my love." And I never told the children. Why? Because I wanted them to learn the value of life on their own. I wanted them to grow without leaning on luxuries they hadn't earned. But that night, as I held the brochure, I realized I had remained silent for too long. My heart was not just broken, it was awakened. I packed my suitcase in silence. The old leather case my husband had once carried during his travels. The sound of its buckles snapping shut echoed through the house, like a drum roll for the storm that was about to come. My family would leave in the morning, thinking I would remain here in the shadows. But no, this time I would not sit by the window waiting for postcards that never arrived. This time I would be there, standing under the sun, watching the surprise in their eyes as they discovered the truth. Do you want to know how it feels to carry a secret so heavy that even your own blood cannot guess it? Tell me in the comments, my dear ones, because your stories matter as much as mine. And stay with me, because the moment I stepped into that resort, the past collided with the present in ways you could never imagine. I remember the journey as if it happened yesterday. The train clattered through the countryside, past fields bathed in golden light, past small villages where children waved from the tracks. My heart pounded in rhythm with the wheels, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I was not a forgotten grandmother anymore. I was a storm in motion, a truth wrapped in silk and shadows. And when I arrived at the airport, I felt my husband's presence guiding me, whispering, "Go, love, show them who you are." I boarded the plane. Around me, strangers chatted, couples held hands, and children giggled as they pressed their noses to the windows. I sat alone, my hands clasped on my lap, my mind spinning with memories. I could already see it, the moment my children's faces would freeze in shock. The gasps, the whispers, the sudden realization that the mother they had hidden from their perfect holiday was the very heart of it all. And when the plane descended over the turquoise waters, and I saw the resort glistening below, like a jewel of the sea, my eyes filled with tears. This was more than a building. This was my story, my love, my sacrifice carved into stone and glass. And soon they would know it. But little did I realize, the surprise I carried in my heart was only the beginning, because when I stepped into that resort, I uncovered secrets even deeper than my own. Secrets that would shake not just my family, but everything we thought we knew about loyalty, inheritance, and love. So stay with me, my dear ones. Subscribe if you haven't yet, because this journey is not just mine, it is yours too. And believe me, what you are about to hear will keep you awake long into the night, wondering just how far love, betrayal, and destiny can take us. The taxi that carried me from the airport to the resort smelled faintly of leather and sea air. The driver, a wiry man with a weathered face, kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror. Perhaps he wondered why an old woman traveled alone, dressed in her dark blue coat and clutching a suitcase that looked older than herself. But I didn't explain. Some journeys are too sacred to be shared with strangers. As the car wound its way along the coastal road, the resort appeared like a vision out of a dream. White villas gleamed in the sunlight, their glass windows catching the sea's reflection. Palm trees lined the entrance, swaying gently in the breeze, and fountains sang with water that sparkled like diamonds. My breath caught in my throat, not because I hadn't seen it before, but because I had. Every brick, every balcony, every pathway was a memory. My memory, my husband's vision, my sacrifice turned into stone, and soon my children's hiding place. I stepped out of the taxi, my cane clicking softly against the marble driveway. Staff hurried forward, their eyes widening when they recognized me. One bowed low, whispering, "Madam." Ah, how sweet the sound of that word. Madam, after years of being ignored as nothing more than a weary grandmother in a dark old house. But I quickly raised my finger to my lips. "Not yet," I murmured. "They must not know." My plan was simple. I would let them arrive, let them laugh, let them drink their cocktails by the sea. And then, when the moment was right, I would step out of the shadows and reveal the truth. Do you see, my dear ones, how fate sometimes allows us these moments? Comment below if you believe in destiny, because I swear to you, that night I felt the universe itself conspiring with me. The concierge led me to the private villa at the edge of the cliff. From its balcony, The ocean stretched endlessly, its waves crashing with a rhythm that echoed my heart. I laid my suitcase on the polished floor and stood there, alone but powerful, like a queen in exile waiting to reclaim her throne. For hours, I prepared myself, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, for what was to come. When their car finally arrived, I watched from the shadows of my balcony. My son stepped out first, tall and proud, his hair peppered with gray that he tried so hard to hide. Beside him, his wife, my daughter-in-law, clutched her designer bag as though she were the queen of the world. And then my grandchildren, young and glowing, their laughter ringing through the air like bells. My heart clenched. For a fleeting moment, I wanted to run to them, to wrap them in my arms and forget everything. But no, they had chosen to hide this from me, and they needed to learn what it means to betray love. That evening, I moved quietly through the resort, watching them from afar. They sat by the pool, sipping drinks garnished with slices of pineapple. I heard my daughter-in-law say, "This was such a perfect idea. Mum would never have managed the trip anyway. It's better this way." The words stabbed me deeper than any blade. Better this way. To them, I was not a mother, not a grandmother. I was a burden, a shadow too heavy to carry into their perfect world. Tell me, my dear ones, have you ever heard words so cruel spoken by the ones you love most? If you have, share it in the comments, because tonight we cry together. And if you haven't, may God protect you from such pain. The next morning, I decided it was time. I dressed carefully, in a flowing white dress my husband once adored. Around my neck, I wore the locket he had given me, the one that still held a faded photo of us on our wedding day. My reflection in the mirror startled me. I did not look like a forgotten old woman anymore. I looked like the mistress of the sea, the keeper of secrets, the true owner of this paradise. I walked slowly down the marble steps into the grand dining hall. The staff parted for me as though I were royalty. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the scent of roses filled the air. At the far table, my family sat laughing over breakfast, their plates filled with fruit and pastries. None of them noticed me at first. I let them laugh. I let them chatter. And then I cleared my throat. The sound silenced the hall. Heads turned. My grandchildren gasped. My daughter-in-law dropped her fork, the clatter echoing like thunder. And my son, my own son, went pale as a ghost. "Mother," he whispered. I smiled, though my eyes burned with tears. Yes, your mother, the one you thought too weak to join you, the one you thought better left behind in the shadows of England. But tell me, my children, how does it feel to sit at my table, in my resort, enjoying luxuries built from the sacrifices of the very woman you abandoned? Their faces froze. Silence fell. The only sound was the sea outside, roaring as though applauding my revelation. But it didn't end there. Oh no, my dear ones. That was only the beginning, because just as the truth began to settle, another shadow from the past stepped into the light. A man, a face I had not seen in decades. His voice was rough but unmistakable. "So, you finally told them," he said, his eyes locking onto mine. And in that moment, the world I thought I controlled began to unravel, because the secrets I had guarded all my life were not mine alone. My dear listeners, if your heart is racing as fast as mine was that day, I beg you, stay with me. Subscribe now so you do not miss what comes next. Because this story is far from over. The betrayal, the inheritance, the ghost from my past. It all collides here at this very resort, and I promise you, the next part will change everything you think you know about family, love, and the price of silence. I never thought my past would walk into that resort. Not on that day, not in front of my children. Yet there he was, standing in the doorway of the dining hall, as if time itself had carried him straight from my memories into the present. His hair was silver now, his face etched with lines of sorrow and survival, But his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, had not changed. I knew them too well. My breath caught in my chest. I felt the room sway. My hand tightened on my cane, but I did not let myself fall. No, not here. Not in front of my family. My children were already stunned by the revelation that I owned the resort. How could they possibly endure this new storm? "Who is he?" my daughter-in-law asked, her voice trembling as she glanced between us. My son said nothing. He was staring at me, searching my face for answers I wasn't ready to give. My grandchildren, wide-eyed, clutched each other's hands. The man took a step forward. The staff lowered their heads in respect, but their eyes darted nervously. He was no stranger here. He belonged. "You kept your promise well," he said, his voice low, almost tender. "But you never told them." Not a word. The hall was silent, yet I felt the walls closing in, the chandeliers flickering as though they too leaned closer to hear. My heart hammered. For years I had hidden this truth, buried it deep in the soil of my soul, and now it had risen like a ghost. "Children," I said, my voice steady, though my hand shook. "This man is part of a story I never told you, a story of love, betrayal, and choices that shaped the life you live today." My son's face hardened. "Mother, what are you saying? Who is he?" I looked at the man, at Edward. Yes, that was his name, the name I had whispered in secret during sleepless nights, the name that once burned on my lips like fire. Edward, the man who had nearly taken me away from everything, the man who vanished when my husband returned from wars, the man I thought lost forever. His name, I said slowly, each word like a stone, is Edward. And once, many years ago, before your father and I built this life together, I loved him. A gasp rippled through the hall. My daughter-in-law pressed her hand to her chest, as if she had swallowed poison. My son's fist clenched on the table. My grandchildren's innocent eyes grew wide, trying to piece together the puzzle of a past they could not imagine. Edward's smile was sad. "Loved?" he whispered. "Or still love?" His words cut me deeper than any betrayal my family had dealt me. But I did not falter. I lifted my chin. What is past. I chose my husband. I chose this family. I chose to bury you, Edward. The silence was unbearable. Even the sea outside seemed to hold its breath. Finally my son stood, his voice trembling with rage. "So this is your secret, Mother. While we grew up believing in father's honor, in the perfect marriage you two had, you were hiding him." My eyes filled with tears. "Don't you dare question your father's honor. He was a good man, the best I've ever known. I never betrayed him. I never left his side. But life is not always as simple as black and white. There are shadows you cannot see until they fall across your own path." I turned to Edward. "Why are you here now, after all these years? Why step into my life again, into their lives?" He looked at me with a gaze that seemed to pierce my soul. "Because the resort is not just yours, Margaret. You know it. This place, this paradise. It was never meant to belong to you alone. You and I built it together, long before your husband claimed it as his legacy. And now your family sits here, enjoying what was once theirs. While my name is buried in the sand." My family gasped. My knees trembled, but I held myself tall. "You lie," I whispered, though in my heart I knew it was not entirely a lie. My husband had given me the resort, yes, but he had not been the one to start it. Long before him, in the fire of my youth, Edward and I had dreamed of it. We had drawn sketches of villas on napkins, spoken of white walls and blue waters, promised we would build a place where the world could rest its weary soul. He had the vision, I had the will, and together we planted the seed. But when he left, when war, betrayal, and silence swallowed him, I thought that dream had died. My husband revived it years later, never knowing it was Edward's ghost he was breathing life into, and now that ghost had returned. My son slammed his fist on the table. "Enough of this. What are we supposed to believe, Mother? that this man, this stranger, is the true owner of the resort, that our lives have been a lie. I wanted to shout, to scream, to hold his face, and tell him no, his life was not a lie, that love, sacrifice, and loyalty had built the world he knew. But before I could speak, Edward's voice rang out again. They deserve the truth, Margaret. All of it. About me. About their father. About why you disappeared for weeks that summer. All those years ago. The room spun. My chest tightened. The very secret I had buried beneath decades of silence, the one truth that could destroy everything, was clawing its way to the surface. I whispered, barely able to breathe. No, not here, not now. But it was too late. My children's eyes burned into me, demanding answers. The resort staff watched in silence, torn between duty and curiosity. And Edward stood there like a storm, ready to tear apart the fragile house of lies I had built. My dear ones, if your heart aches, as mine does, if you feel the weight of secrets pressing against your chest, like this video, share it so others may understand the cost of silence. And please, subscribe, because the truth I am about to reveal, it will shake you to your core. For in that moment, I knew, to protect my family, I would have to confess the one thing I swore I would carry to my grave. And once I spoke it, nothing, no laughter, no memory, no love, would ever be the same again. The hall felt colder than the sea breeze outside. My children's faces were pale, their eyes wide, their hands clenched on the table as though they feared the ground might vanish beneath them. Edward stood still, his shadow stretching across the marble floor like a blade. And I stood at the center, my secret pressing against my ribs. Desperate to be freed, yet terrifying to release. Mother, my son said, his voice breaking like glass. What does he mean? What happened that summer? Why would he say such things? I closed my eyes. I could still smell the summer air from decades ago. The scent of wild roses, climbing the garden wall of my English home. The laughter of children echoing in the distance, while my heart battled between loyalty and longing. That summer, the summer my husband was away, serving his duty. The summer Edward returned from the shadows, whispering promises I had longed to hear. The summer that almost broke me. When I opened my eyes, tears blurred the chandeliers above. That summer, I began, my voice trembling. I made a mistake I buried deep, because I could not bear to let it destroy the family your father and I built. Gasps echoed around me. My daughter-in-law's hand flew to her mouth. My grandchildren leaned closer, their innocence burning holes into my soul. Edward's gaze did not waver. Tell them, Margaret. Tell them the truth. I swallowed hard. Your father was gone. The war took him far away. Letters were scarce. I was alone, frightened, carrying the weight of the house. And you, my son, still so young then. And then Edward returned. He was not the man you see now. He was strong, full of fire, full of dreams. He reminded me of who I once was, before the burdens, before the wrinkles, before life pressed me into silence. He offered me escape. For a moment, I almost took it. My son's chair scraped back. Almost. His voice cracked. I nodded. I did not betray your father. I swear it on his grave. But I was tempted, and temptation leaves scars, even when resisted. Edward and I dreamed again of the resort, of a life by the sea, of freedom. But when your father returned, I chose him. I chose loyalty. I chose family. And Edward, I turned to him, my voice sharp as a blade. Edward vanished, leaving nothing but whispers of what might have been. Edward stepped forward, his jaw tight. Vanished? No, Margaret. I left because your husband made me. He found out. He came to me one night, his uniform still smelling of gunpowder, and he said, if you love her, leave her. If you respect her, disappear. And I did. because I knew his love was stronger than mine. But don't pretend, Margaret, that we didn't build this dream together. This resort is as much mine as it is yours." The hall erupted in murmurs. My son's face turned red with fury. "So you're telling me my father knew that all this time, while we looked up to him as a pillar of honor, he carried this secret too?" I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "No, he didn't know everything. He suspected, yes. He was a man of sharp instincts. But he trusted me, and I never broke that trust. That's what you must remember." But my son was already trembling with anger. "And you never told us. You let us grow up thinking our family was perfect, while hiding this scandal." I raised my chin, though my heart shattered inside me. "I hid it because you were children, because love is not always clean and pure. Sometimes love is war, sometimes love is sacrifice, and sometimes love is silence." At that moment, my youngest grandchild, my sweet granddaughter, barely 16, spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft, but cut deeper than any accusation. "Grandma, is he my real grandfather?" The room froze. My blood ran cold. Edward's eyes flickered with something. Pain, longing, guilt. My son roared, "How dare you!" slamming his hand on the table so hard the glasses rattled. I staggered, clutching my locket, my breath caught in my throat. "No," I said, my voice breaking. "Your grandfather was, and always will be, the man who raised your father, who built this family with me, who carried us through storms. Do not let anyone take that from him. Edward. Edward is just a shadow from the past." Edward's face twisted. "A shadow? Is that all I am to you, Margaret? After everything?" I stared at him, my tears falling freely now. "Yes, Edward, a shadow. Because I chose the light, and you are not it." Silence fell. Heavy, suffocating silence. My son sank into his chair, his hands covering his face. My daughter-in-law stared at me, as though I were a stranger. My grandchildren clung to each other, confused and frightened. And Edward turned away, his shoulders hunched, his figure swallowed by the sunlight streaming through the glass doors. But before he left, he spoke once more. "This resort may carry your husband's name, Margaret, but we both know whose dream it truly was. One day, your children will have to decide if they inherit the truth, or the lie." And with that, he walked out, leaving behind a silence so deep I could hear my own heartbeat. I sank into a chair, my strength gone. My son finally looked at me. His eyes filled not with rage now, but with something worse. Disappointment. "Mother," he whispered, "why did you never trust us with the truth?" I reached for his hand, but he pulled away, and that cut me deeper than Edward's return, deeper than betrayal itself. My dear listeners, if you are still here with me, I ask you, have you ever carried a secret so heavy you thought it would destroy the ones you love if spoken? If so, tell me in the comments, because I cannot carry mine alone anymore. And please, subscribe, because this is only part of my story. That night, alone in my villa, I sat on the balcony overlooking the sea. The waves roared like my soul, restless, unforgiving. I clutched my husband's locket and whispered into the wind, "Forgive me, my love. I tried to protect them. I tried to protect you. But the past has a way of finding us, no matter how deeply we bury it." And as the moon rose above the resort, casting its silver glow across the water, I realized something terrible. Edward's return was not a coincidence. He hadn't come back just for me, or for the truth. No, he had come back with a plan that threatened not only my family's peace, but everything I had ever built. Stay with me, my dear ones. Share this video so others may hear this warning. Secrets never stay buried. And believe me, the storm that followed Edward's return was greater than anything I had endured before. The betrayal of being left behind on a vacation was nothing compared to what was coming. The night after Edward's return, I could not sleep. The waves outside the villa crashed like restless thoughts. each one pulling me deeper into the undertow of memory. My husband's locket lay heavy in my palm, its chain coiled like a serpent. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Edward's face, not as it was now, worn and lined, but as it was then, fierce and alive, when he spoke of dreams that seemed larger than the sky. But I also saw my husband's face, gentle, steadfast, a man who carried not only his own burdens, but mine too, a man who had forgiven my silence, even when he suspected its weight. And I knew, if I faltered now, his memory would shatter. At dawn, the knock came, slow, deliberate, echoing through the villa like a summons. I opened the door to find a sealed envelope on the floor. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a letter written in Edward's unmistakable hand. Margaret, it read, I have returned not to destroy you, but to claim what is mine. Half of this resort belongs to me by right. I have documents, proof of our plans, signed by your younger self when you believed in me. You can deny me in front of your family, but the law will not. Tomorrow I will meet with your son. He deserves to know the truth of his inheritance. Decide now. Stand with me, or be crushed by the truth when it reaches them without your voice. I sat on the edge of my bed, the letter shaking in my hands. Half of everything my husband had worked for. Half of what I had built with sweat and silence. He was threatening to cut my legacy in two, and worse, he was threatening to turn my son against me. My dear listeners, let me pause here and ask you, what would you do if your past came knocking with proof of a truth you wished forgotten? Would you fight? Would you confess? Or would you run? Comment below, because your answers may guide others who one day face the ghosts of their own past. I folded the letter and pressed it to my chest. No, I thought, I will not let him take what is mine. What is my husband's? What is my children's? But already the poison had begun to spread. At breakfast that morning, my son refused to meet my eyes. He spoke little, answering my questions with curt nods. My daughter-in-law, always eager to fan the flames, whispered into his ear like a serpent, her eyes flicking toward me with barely concealed contempt. And my grandchildren. Oh, my sweet grandchildren. They looked at me as though I were a stranger, wearing their grandmother's face. And then, as if on cue, Edward appeared, not in secret this time, but boldly, striding into the dining hall as though he were already master of the place. He greeted the staff by name, accepted their bows as though he had earned them, and then he joined my family's table, without invitation, without shame. Good morning, he said smoothly, his voice a dagger wrapped in silk. I hope you slept well. I, myself, hardly slept at all. Thinking of the future of this beautiful resort, my son frowned. Why should the future of the resort concern you? Edward smiled, slow and deliberate. Because, my dear boy, this resort was built on my vision. Your mother may not have told you, but once upon a time, she and I planned it together. And I still hold the documents to prove it. The color drained from my son's face. My daughter-in-law leaned forward, her eyes gleaming like a predator's. Documents? What kind of documents? Edward slid a folder onto the table. My heart nearly stopped. He had them. The sketches, the signatures, the agreements we had scribbled in our youth when the resort was only a dream. I had forgotten about them, thought they had been lost to time. But no, Edward had kept them, preserved them, waiting for the day he could wield them like a weapon. My son's hand trembled as he opened the folder. His eyes scanned the pages. When he looked up, his gaze was hard. Is this true, Mother? I wanted to scream, to tear the papers to shreds and scatter them into the sea. But my voice failed me. All I could whisper was, yes. But it is not what you think. Edward leaned back, smug. The truth, my boy, is rarely what we think. But facts do not lie. Your mother may have given everything to your father, but she gave this dream to me first. And so, by right, half of it belongs to me. My son stood, his chair toppling behind him. "I need time," he muttered, storming away. My daughter-in-law followed, clutching the folder as though it were treasure. My grandchildren trailed behind, their eyes darting between Edward and me. And just like that, my family, my blood, slipped further from my grasp. I turned to Edward, my voice breaking. "Why are you doing this? Haven't you hurt me enough?" His smile faded. For a moment, I saw the man I once loved, broken and desperate. Because, Margaret, I lost everything. My family, my fortune, my life's work. I have nothing left but this resort, this dream we once built together. And I will not let you erase me from it. I shook my head, tears blinding me. You don't understand. This resort is not just stone and sea. It is my husband's blood. It is my children's inheritance. It is the only proof I have that my life of sacrifice meant something. Edward's voice softened. Then share it with me, not as enemies, but as partners. One last chance, Margaret. Give me my half, and I will give you peace. Peace. The word echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. There could be no peace in tearing my husband's gift in two. No peace in letting Edward's shadow claim half my light. "No," I said, my voice steady now. "I will not share what is not yours. You can wave your papers. You can poison my family against me, but I will fight you with every breath I have left. This resort is mine, Edward, and I will not let you take it." His eyes darkened. "Then prepare yourself, Margaret, because the truth, once unleashed, cannot be caged again. And the battle for this resort has only just begun." He left me there, trembling, alone in the dining hall. Around me, the whispers of staff filled the air like the hiss of snakes. Already the rumor spread. The great Madame Margaret was not the sole mistress of the resort, after all. Already, my throne of silence was cracking. That night, I stood on the cliff's edge, the sea roaring beneath me. The wind tore at my dress, the salt stung my eyes, and for a moment, I thought of letting go, of falling into the water and letting it carry my secrets away. But then I heard a voice, my husband's voice. "Don't let them forget who you are." And I knew I would not fall. I would rise. My dear ones, if you are still with me, if you believe I must fight for my legacy, like this video, share it so others may know the strength of a grandmother's heart. And subscribe, because the war for my family's soul is far from over, and Edward's plan, oh, it was only beginning to unfold. The following morning, I woke to silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy silence of a house where whispers had already poisoned the air. I walked through the villa and noticed the absence. The usual laughter of my grandchildren at breakfast was gone. The hum of conversation between my son and his wife, replaced by closed doors and muffled voices. I was alone in my own house, and yet every shadow told me I was not welcome. When I reached the dining hall, I saw them. My son, my daughter-in-law, Edward, seated together at the long oak table. They stopped talking the moment I entered, their eyes shifting, their hands covering papers I was not meant to see. My son cleared his throat awkwardly, while my daughter-in-law smirked. And Edward, Edward had the audacity to greet me, as though I were a guest. "Ah, Margaret," he said warmly, rising from his chair, as though to honor me. "We were just discussing the future of the resort. Your son has brilliant ideas, and I must say, he has inherited both your vision and your husband's pragmatism." I froze. My son avoided my gaze, staring at the silverware instead. My daughter-in-law, however, leaned forward, her eyes shining. "Edward thinks we can expand the resort, open new wings, invite investors. With his documents and his experience, it's the perfect partnership." Her words sliced through me. Partnership. They were already speaking as though Edward had been welcomed into the fold, as though his lies and his threats were not a knife aimed at my heart. "Is this true?" I asked, my voice low. "Do you plan to work with him?" My son finally looked up. His eyes were hard, but beneath the hardness was confusion. Conflict. The kind only a son feels when torn between loyalty and doubt. Mother, you never told me about this. About him. About the papers. How can I trust you now if you've hidden so much from me? I felt my knees weaken. Oh, my dear listeners. If you have ever had your own child look at you not as a parent, but as a stranger, you will understand the pain that struck me then. It is sharper than any betrayal, heavier than any grief. And if you know this pain, I ask you to write it in the comments, so others may see that they are not alone in such heartbreak. I tried to speak, but my daughter-in-law cut me off. You see? Secrets, lies, and silence. Edward has been honest with us, more honest than you. Maybe it's time we consider his side of the story. I turned to Edward, fury blazing. You dare speak of honesty when you've spent decades hiding in shadows, when you've waited until my husband was gone to crawl back into my life. Edward didn't flinch. He only smiled, calm as the sea before a storm. I am not here to crawl, Margaret. I am here to rise. And if your family chooses to rise with me, then perhaps that says more about the cracks in your throne than about me. The room tilted. My son lowered his gaze. My daughter-in-law placed her hand atop Edward's documents, and I realized the battle had already begun, and I was outnumbered. That night, I wandered the resort grounds. I passed the gardens, where the flowers my husband had planted once bloomed like hope. I passed the pool, where my grandchildren once splashed and called my name, and I passed the new construction sites, where Edward's men had already begun inspecting the land, as though ownership were already decided. The resort, my sanctuary, my legacy, was slipping from my hands like sand, and I felt something awaken inside me. A fire, a fury, a voice that whispered, "You will not let him win." I returned to my chambers and opened the old chest at the foot of my bed. Inside were letters, my husband's letters, written through the years. Love letters, yes, but also business plans, contracts, hidden notes that only he and I understood. He had trusted me with his vision, trusted me to carry it after his death. And buried in those papers was proof that Edward had no claim, that whatever dream we once shared had long been replaced by a reality forged by my husband and me. I clutched the letters to my chest, and I whispered to the night, "You will not destroy me, Edward, not while I still breathe." But the next day, Edward struck harder. He arranged a meeting, not with me, but with the staff. Every maid, every chef, every gardener was called into the great hall, and there, before their loyal eyes, he presented himself as co-founder of the resort. He waved his papers, spoke of his sacrifices, his vision, his love for this place, and the staff, the staff who had known me for years, they hesitated, they whispered, they looked at me with doubt. When I tried to speak, Edward interrupted, his voice booming. "Ask her yourself. Ask your madam why she never told you about me, about the truth of your beloved resort. If she cannot answer, then perhaps her silence is the answer you seek." The betrayal was complete. The staff bowed, confused. My son stood beside Edward, silent but complicit. My daughter-in-law whispered triumph into his ear, and my grandchildren, my precious grandchildren, stood at the back of the hall, their eyes wide, their hearts uncertain. I left before the tears could fall. I would not let them see me break. That night, I stood at the balcony overlooking the sea. The waves roared like applause for Edward's performance. My hands shook, clutching my husband's letters. I thought of burning them, of ending the war with fire. But then I realized these letters were not ashes. They were weapons, my weapons. I turned to the moon and whispered, "If Edward wants a war, then a war he shall have." My dear ones, if you are still listening, if your heart is still beating with mine, then I beg you, like this video, share it and subscribe, because what comes next will not be for the faint of heart. I will fight for my husband's legacy. I will fight for my children's inheritance, and I will fight for the truth. And in this battle, not all will survive unscathed. And so, as the waves crashed below, I prepared for the storm to come. I did not sleep that night, while the rest of the villa drifted into uneasy silence. I sat at my desk with a candle burning low. My husband's letters spread before me. His handwriting danced across the pages, like whispers from the grave, urging me onward. Do not let them forget who we are, he had written once, in a letter penned after the first stone of the resort was laid. Do not let them take what we built with our own hands. This is not just a place, Margaret. It is the heart of our family. Protect it, even from those who claim to love you. Those words burned into me. Protect it, even from those who claim to love you. And now, the threat was not just Edward. It was my own blood, already swayed by his poison. I realized then that silence was no longer my shield. If I wanted to save this resort, my family, my legacy, I would have to speak louder than I ever had before. At dawn, I summoned the staff, not with Edward, not with my son, or his scheming wife, but alone. They gathered in the courtyard, their faces wary, their loyalty fractured. I stood before them, with the letters pressed against my heart. My children, I began, my voice trembling but clear. You have served this house faithfully for years. You have seen me laugh, you have seen me weep, and you have carried the weight of this resort on your shoulders as though it were your own. But now, doubt has entered these walls, carried by a man who claims to own what he never built. A man who holds papers from the past, but not the truth of the present. The staff murmured. Some looked away, others leaned closer. I raised the letters high. These are my husband's words, I said, my voice breaking. He built this place. He poured his soul into every brick, every garden, every corner of this resort. And in these letters, he made it clear, this resort is ours, mine, and my family's, not Edward's. Edward may claim a dream, but it was my husband who turned it into reality. I began to read aloud, my voice echoing across the courtyard. Letters about the sacrifices we made, the debts my husband paid, the nights he went without sleep to secure this land. Letters that proved Edward was nothing more than a ghost, clinging to an idea. And as I read, I saw it, the shift. The staff's eyes softened. Their whispers turned into nods. Their loyalty, fragile and shaken, began to tilt back toward me. But Edward was not idle. That very afternoon, he stormed into the courtyard with my son and daughter-in-law at his side. His face was red, his voice thunderous. So this is your game, Margaret, waving love letters like banners of war. Do you think words will undo the truth of my documents? I did not flinch. Your documents show dreams. His letters show reality. Which do you think these people trust more? The dream of a man who abandoned them, or the work of the man who lived and died for them? The staff murmured again, louder this time, their support evident. Edward's jaw tightened. My son looked between us, torn, while my daughter-in-law's nails dug into his arm, urging him to side with Edward. Edward turned to the crowd. Do not be fooled. She hides behind her husband's shadow because she fears the truth. I was here before him. I gave her the vision. Without me, this resort would not exist. The words struck me, but I stood tall. And without my husband, it would never have survived. You speak of beginnings, Edward, but I speak of endurance. Dreams fade. Work remains. My husband's work, my work, is what you see standing before you now, not yours. For the first time, Edward faltered. His voice cracked, his confidence slipping. I saw it, the crack in his armor, but I also saw his fury, a storm building that would not stop until it consumed us both. That night, as I sat by the fire, my son came to me. He looked broken, weary, his shoulders heavy with the weight of betrayal. Mother, he whispered, I don't know what to believe. Edward has his papers. You have father's letters. I just want the truth. I took his hand in mine. The truth, my son, is not always written in ink. It is written in sacrifice, in love, in the things we give without asking anything in return. Edward gave me dreams. Your father gave me life. That is the difference. His eyes filled with tears. For a moment, I thought I had reached him. But then my daughter-in-law appeared at the doorway, her voice sharp. Don't be fooled, she hissed. She's manipulating you. Edward has offered us expansion, profit, security. What has she offered? Letters and sentiment. My son's hand slipped from mine. My heart shattered. And I realized the battle was not just against Edward. It was against the greed in my own family's heart. My dear listeners, if you are still with me, if you believe love is stronger than greed, I beg you, like this video, share it, and subscribe. Because this story is not just mine. It is for every grandmother, every parent, who has fought to protect their family's soul against the hunger of the world. And as I closed my husband's letters that night, I made a vow. Edward wanted war, and so he would have war. But he would learn that a grandmother's love is not weakness. It is fire, and fire, once lit, does not forgive. The next morning, I rose with a fire I had not felt in years. Edward thought me weak, thought my silence meant surrender. He had forgotten. I had lived through wars of the world and wars of the heart. I had buried my husband. I had raised my children. I had carried more weight than he could ever dream of. And now I would fight him with every weapon I had left. The first weapon was hidden in my husband's letters. Among them, I found one that mentioned the land deed, the one we signed when purchasing the grounds for the resort. My husband had insisted that both his name and mine be placed on the final ownership, leaving no room for claims from the past. Edward's papers might prove a dream, but the deed, the law, proved reality. I contacted the family lawyer in secret. He had served us faithfully for decades, and his loyalty was not swayed by Edward's promises. When I showed him the deed, his eyes gleamed. "Madam," he said, "this is ironclad. Whatever that man claims, he has no legal standing. He cannot take a stone from this resort unless you permit it." Relief flooded me, but I knew the battle was not only in court, it was in hearts. My family, my staff, my grandchildren, they had to see Edward for what he truly was. And so, I devised my plan. I invited Edward to a dinner, not a quiet meeting, but a grand feast in the Great Hall, with my family, the staff, and the villagers who had worked these grounds since the beginning. I told Edward it was to discuss the future of the resort. And like the snake he was, he accepted eagerly, certain of his victory. That night, the hall glittered with chandeliers and candlelight. The table stretched long, filled with food and wine. My family sat stiff, torn between me and Edward. The staff lingered, whispering, their loyalty fractured. And Edward, oh, Edward, sat at the head of the table, bold as a king. He raised his glass. "To the future," he declared, "to expansion, prosperity, and to the truth, finally revealed." Whispers rippled through the room. My son lifted his glass hesitantly. My daughter-in-law's eyes shone like a woman tasting victory. But I did not raise mine. I waited. When silence fell, I stood. "Yes," I said, "to the truth." I turned to the lawyer, who entered carrying a leather-bound folder. He placed it before me. I opened it slowly, deliberately, and pulled out the deed. The crowd leaned in. Edward's smile faltered. "This," I said, my voice strong, "is the truth. The legal deed of this land, signed by my husband and me. The only binding proof of ownership. Edward may waive his dreams, but dreams do not own stone and sea. Law does. And by law, this resort belongs to me, and me alone." Gasps filled the hall. The staff straightened. My grandchildren's eyes widened. My son's hands trembled. Edward leapt to his feet, his face red with rage. "Lies! Forgeries!" She has tricked you all." But the lawyer cut him off. "This deed is official. It was registered decades ago. There is no question of its validity. Edward, you have no claim." The hall erupted. Some clapped. Others whispered. My daughter-in-law's face turned pale, her grip on my son's arm tightening like claws. My son looked at me, shame clouding his eyes, and Edward, oh, Edward, staggered back as though struck, his power crumbling before all. But I was not finished. I stepped forward, letters in hand. And if law is not enough, let the heart speak too. My husband's words live in these pages. Words of sacrifice, of love, of sleepless nights and endless work to make this resort thrive. He named no partner but me. He trusted no one but me. This resort is not just my property. It is my husband's final love letter to me and to our family. My voice cracked and tears spilled down my cheeks. And I will not let anyone, no matter how beloved they once were, destroy that. The room was silent. Then slowly the staff began to clap. One by one, their loyalty returned, their voices rising in support. My grandchildren ran to me, clutching my arms, whispering, "We believe you, Grandma." My son stood frozen, torn between wife and mother, but I saw the tears in his eyes. And my daughter-in-law. She hissed into his ear, desperate, her mask of triumph shattering into fear. Edward slammed his fist onto the table. "You think you've won, Margaret? This is not over. If I cannot take this resort by law, I will take it by force." His words echoed like thunder. Gasps filled the hall. Fear spread across the faces of my staff. But I stood tall, my heart burning with fire. "You may try," I said, my voice steady, "but you will learn, Edward. There is no force stronger than a grandmother who fights for her family's soul. Not the sea, not the storm, not even time itself." He glared at me, his face twisted with hatred, and stormed out of the hall. The doors slammed behind him, leaving only silence and the echo of his threat. That night, as I tucked my grandchildren into bed, I knew the war was far from over. Edward had lost the battle of law, but men like him do not retreat quietly. He would return, darker, hungrier, and far more dangerous. My dear listeners, if you are still here with me, if you believe I must continue fighting until Edward is banished from our lives forever, then like this video, share it so others may learn the power of truth, and subscribe, because the storm is coming and you will want to see how it ends. And as the waves roared outside, I whispered into the night, "Come, Edward, strike with all you have, for I am ready." The night after Edward stormed from the hall, the resort grew heavy with unease. Even the sea seemed restless, waves crashing harder against the cliffs, as though nature itself sensed the storm that had yet to break. I did not sleep. I paced the corridors, lantern in hand, listening for sounds that did not belong. For though Edward had lost in front of the crowd, I knew men like him did not accept defeat. He would not disappear. He would scheme. At dawn, my fears proved true. The head gardener came to me, his face pale. "Madam," he whispered, "men were seen at the back gates last night. Strangers. They carried crates. They spoke of Edward." My heart sank. Edward had brought allies. Outsiders who knew nothing of our history, only of profit and power. He was building an army, not of law, not of family, but of fear. I went to confront my son, but found him absent. My daughter-in-law sat in the drawing room, her lips curled into a cold smile. "Your son is with Edward," she said sweetly, though venom dripped from her words. "They are discussing opportunities, expansion, control. You cannot stop progress, Margaret. Progress." That word in her mouth was poison. I wanted to scream, but I held my silence. Silence was no longer my shield, but now it was my weapon. Silence that waited. Silence that struck when least expected. By evening, the truth unfolded. Edward had secured investors from the city, wealthy men who saw the resort not as a home, but as a jewel to be mined. They arrived with papers, contracts, promises of profit. My son, weakened by doubt and manipulated by his wife, listened to them with hungry ears. And Edward, oh Edward, smiled as though victory were already his. But what cut deepest was when my grandchildren came running to me, their little hands clutching papers they had found. "Grandma," they whispered, "they want to change the gardens. They want to tear them down, tear them down. The gardens my husband had planted with his own hands. The roses that carried his scent, the olive trees that carried his patience, the fountain he had carved for me as a gift." My throat burned. My husband's legacy was being carved apart before my very eyes. I gathered my grandchildren close. "Listen to me," I said softly. "This is not progress. This is greed, and greed is a fire that burns everything it touches. Do not be fooled by its light." My dear listeners, I must ask you here, have you ever watched someone you love fall into the hands of greed? Have you seen their eyes change, their heart grow distant, their soul slip away piece by piece? If you have, tell me in the comments, so that others may learn they are not alone in such sorrow. That night, Edward came to me, not with papers, not with charm, but with threats. He entered my chambers uninvited, his face half lit by the candle. "You may have won your little show in the hall," he hissed, "but you will not win the war. I have money now. I have your son. Soon, I will have this resort. Do you know why? Because you are old, Margaret. You cling to the past while I build the future. And the future does not belong to ghosts like you." I stood tall, though my hands trembled. "And yet, Edward, it is the ghosts who haunt the living, not the other way around. You cannot erase what has already been carved into these walls, these stones, these people. My husband lives here still, in every corner of this resort. And so long as I breathe, you will never have it." He leaned close, his breath hot against my ear. "Then be prepared to lose more than stone and sea. Be prepared to lose your family." And with that, he vanished into the shadows, leaving me cold with dread. The next morning, whispers spread through the resort. The staff spoke of bribes, of threats, of promises Edward had made to them in the dead of night. Some were tempted, some faltered, and I knew the resort was splitting, not just in ownership, but in loyalty. I gathered the loyal few and showed them my husband's letters again. I reminded them of his kindness, his sacrifices, his humanity. "Do not sell your souls to greed," I begged. "Stand with me, not for profit, but for honor." But even as I spoke, I saw doubt in their eyes. Fear had entered them, and fear is a harder enemy than greed. That evening my son returned. His face was pale, his hands shaking. "Mother," he said, "Edward has threatened me. He says, if I do not side with him, he will expose our family secrets. He will ruin us." I held his hands. "And will you let him, my son? Will you let him use your fear to make you his puppet?" Tears welled in his eyes. I don't know what to do. And then, from behind him, my daughter-in-law's voice pierced the air. "What you will do," she snapped, "is side with Edward. He is offering us everything. Wealth, power, expansion. Your mother offers you nothing but nostalgia and guilt." I stepped forward, my voice sharp as steel. "And what I offer is dignity. What I offer is the soul of this family. Do you not see? Edward does not want to give you wealth. He wants to take your legacy. Once he has it, he will discard you, just as he discarded me." But my daughter-in-law laughed, cold and cruel. "Better discarded with riches than chained to your memories." My son stood frozen between us, torn in two, his face pale as death. And I knew Edward had succeeded in planting his darkest seed, division. That night, as I sat alone, the sea roared louder than ever. I pressed my husband's letters to my chest and whispered, "They want war, my love, and I will give it to them. My dear ones, if you are still with me, if your heart burns with mine, then I ask you, like this video, share it with those who know the pain of betrayal, and subscribe. Because Edward has brought allies, and the battle ahead will not just be for land or legacy, it will be for the soul of my family itself. And I am ready to fight until the end." The storm I had feared came not with thunder or rain, but with whispers. Whispers that spread like poison ivy, curling around the hearts of those I loved. It began with the maid who refused to meet my eyes, then the butler who avoided my questions, and then, one night at dinner, my granddaughter stared at me with confusion, her little brow furrowed, and asked, "Grandma, is it true you once abandoned your own child?" The table fell silent, my fork slipped from my hand. My son looked at me, his face pale. My daughter-in-law smirked, satisfied. And in that instant, I knew Edward had opened the locked doors of my past, dragging my deepest wound into the light. My dear listeners, you must know, long ago, before I met my husband, I bore a child in secret. I was young, frightened, and the world was cruel to unmarried mothers. My family forced me to give that baby away. I carried the shame in silence, buried it so deep that even my children never knew. Only my husband knew, and he never judged me. He held me tighter, telling me I was still worthy of love. But Edward had unearthed it, and now he wielded it like a dagger. I looked into my granddaughter's eyes and forced a trembling smile. "My darling," I whispered, "there are truths too heavy for little shoulders. Someday, when you are older, I will tell you everything. But never doubt this. I have never abandoned love, not once, but the damage was done. My son looked at me with betrayal, my daughter-in-law with triumph, and Edward, oh Edward, he arrived the very next morning, bold as ever, holding papers in his hand. You see," he said, waving the documents, birth records, adoption files, the evidence of my secret past. She is no saint. She is no matriarch. She is a liar, a coward. How can you trust her to guard your legacy when she could not even guard her own child? I stood, spine straight, though my heart shattered inside me. Yes, Edward, it is true. I bore a child before my marriage. I was young, I was afraid, and the world gave me no mercy. But do not mistake secrecy for shame. My life has been an unbroken chain of sacrifices, of choices made not for myself, but for others. Do you know what it is to sacrifice, Edward? To give up pieces of your soul for those you love? But Edward only laughed. Love is weakness. Sacrifice is stupidity. I build empires, Margaret, not excuses. And soon, your family will see you as the failure you truly are. And the worst part? I saw the hesitation in my son's eyes. He was torn again. Torn between the mother who raised him and the uncle who promised him the world. That night, I walked the halls of the resort, alone. The portraits of ancestors stared down at me, their painted eyes filled with judgment. Or was it pity? I whispered to them, "Did you suffer like this? Did you watch your blood betray you, your love trampled underfoot?" The sea raged against the cliffs, louder than ever. It felt as though my husband was shouting through the waves, urging me to stand strong, so I did. The next day, I gathered everyone, family, staff, guests, in the great hall once more. The tension was a knife in the air. Edward stood smug at the front, his papers ready, his allies lurking at his side. My son and daughter-in-law stood near him, their loyalty fragile but leaning away from me. I stepped forward. "You have all heard whispers," I began, my voice steady though my hands trembled. "You have all been fed secrets twisted into daggers. So hear the truth from me. Yes, I had a child before my marriage. Yes, that child was taken from me. It was the greatest pain of my youth, and it has haunted me every day since. But do not mistake my silence for shame. I built this home, this family, This legacy, not out of perfection, but out of resilience. My strength is not in hiding scars. It is in carrying them with dignity. The room was silent. Edward smirked, sure I would crumble. But then I turned to the crowd, my voice fierce. And now I ask you, what has Edward sacrificed? What has Edward built? Nothing but schemes, nothing but greed. He offers gold, but it is blood-soaked. He offers power, but it is poisoned. He would see this resort stripped bare, its gardens torn apart, its legacy destroyed, all for his hunger. And you must ask yourselves, will you side with a man who destroys, or a woman who has spent her life protecting? I could feel my husband's spirit beside me, his hand on mine, steadying me. Edward's face twisted with rage. He raised his papers high. Do not let her fool you. She is weak. She is broken. She is... But then, my granddaughter stepped forward. Her little voice trembled, but it cut through the hall. Grandma is not weak. She tells me stories every night. She teaches me kindness. Edward, you tell me nothing but lies. Gasps filled the hall. Edward faltered, his hand shaking. For all his power, all his papers, he had been struck down by the voice of a child, the very innocence he sought to exploit. The hall erupted in whispers. Some turned from Edward, some stepped closer to me. The tide was shifting, but Edward's eyes burned with a new kind of fire, a desperate, dangerous fire. He stormed up to me, leaning close, his voice a venomous hiss. If you think this is over, you are a fool. I will destroy you, Margaret. If it takes tearing apart every memory you have, I will do it. I looked into his eyes and saw not my brother, but a man consumed by his own darkness. And though fear clawed at my heart, I whispered back, then you had better destroy me quickly, Edward, because every day I breathe, I grow stronger, and every word I speak, I plant seeds of truth. And truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds its way back to the light. My dear listeners, I tell you this not to gain your pity, but to remind you, never let anyone weaponize your past. Our scars are not our shame. They are our strength. And if you believe that, if you too have scars you refuse to hide, then write in the comments, I stand with truth. And do not forget to like this story, to share it with someone who needs courage tonight, and to subscribe, for Edward's war is far from over. He has shown his teeth, but I have yet to bear mine. After Edward's venomous vow in the hall, silence settled across the resort. But it was not peace. It was the silence before a blade is drawn. Even the air felt different, heavy, watchful. The very next morning, disaster struck. The kitchens caught fire. Flames leapt from the stoves, racing up the wooden beams, sending smoke billowing into the halls. Guests screamed. Staff ran in panic. I rushed to the courtyard, shouting for water, blankets, buckets, anything to fight the blaze. And yet, as the fire spread, I saw something chilling. 2 of the kitchen boys stood frozen, not helping, only watching, and smiling. When the flames were finally beaten down and the smoke cleared, I confronted them. Why did you not help? Why did you stand idle while everything burned? Their eyes darted nervously, and then one muttered. Edward said not to interfere. My blood turned to ice. Edward had ordered this. My own brother had turned fire into his weapon. I stood in the charred ruins of the kitchen, the scent of smoke clinging to my hair, and I whispered, You think fire will break me, Edward? Fire has forged me. You cannot destroy what has already walked through flames. But it was not only fire. Small acts of sabotage began to bleed the resort. The gardens were trampled in the night, rare flowers cut down. The fountain my husband carved was filled with mud. Guests whispered of poor service, of chaos behind the scenes. The staff, divided, no longer worked as one. Edward's poison had seeped into their veins. One evening, as I walked the halls with a lantern, I found the library door ajar. Inside, My son stood with Edward. Papers spread across the table. They did not see me in the shadows, but I heard every word. "You must choose, nephew," Edward hissed. "Your mother is drowning you in sentiment. I offer you wealth, expansion, power. Sign with me, and together we can push her aside. Do you want to be a man of the future, or a child clinging to his mother's skirts?" My son's voice trembled. "She raised me, Edward. She gave me everything." Edward slammed his fist on the table. "And what has she given you now? Stories, memories. You cannot feed your children with memories. Sign the papers, and I will make you greater than her ever was." My heart broke as my son bowed his head in silence. I slipped away before they saw me, but the pain followed me to my chambers. My husband's portrait stared down at me. His painted eyes filled with the question I could not answer. Will our son betray us? My dear listeners, have you ever watched your own blood hesitate between love and betrayal? It is a pain no words can carry, a silence that deafens. If you have felt that silence, tell me in the comments, so others may know they are not alone. The next blow came swiftly. Letters arrived, anonymous, cruel. Each one slipped under my door like a serpent in the night. They accused me of being unfit, of being a liar, of being the ruin of this family. But one froze my blood. It read, "Your lost child has returned." And they stand with Edward. I dropped the paper, my hands shaking. Could it be true? Could the child I bore in secrecy, the child torn from me so long ago, now be standing at Edward's side? I told myself it was impossible, a trick, another of Edward's manipulations. And yet, the very next day, the proof stood before me. A stranger arrived at the resort, a man grown, eyes cold as steel, lips twisted in bitterness. And when I looked into his face, I saw it, the unmistakable resemblance. The blood of my blood, my lost child. Edward introduced him with a grin, sharp as a knife. "Margaret," he said mockingly, "you remember your son, don't you? The one you abandoned. He remembers you. He remembers everything." I could not breathe. My knees nearly buckled beneath me. The boy I had carried in my womb, the child I had never held, was now a man before me. And his eyes, they held not love, but hatred. "Mother!" He spat the word as though it were poison. "Do you know what it is to grow up unwanted? To know your own blood cast you aside like refuse?" Edward told me everything. He told me how you built a new family, a perfect life, while I rotted in shadows. "You are no mother. You are my curse." The words sliced me open. I reached out, tears burning my cheeks. No, my son. I did not abandon you. I was forced. I was a child myself, and I had no choice. If I had had even a breath of freedom, I would have kept you with me, always. Please believe me. But he turned from me, his jaw hard. You had choices, and you chose to forget me. Edward's smirk widened. You see, Margaret, even your own flesh has turned against you. How long until the rest follow? My world tilted. I staggered back, clutching the doorframe for balance. My heart screamed with love for the child before me, yet he saw me as nothing but a monster. That night, alone in my chambers, I sobbed as I had not sobbed in decades. My tears fell onto my husband's letters, blurring his words, and I whispered, "How do I fight this? How do I fight my own blood?" And in the silence, the sea answered, crashing against the cliffs with relentless force. It seemed to say, "You do not fight him, Margaret. You fight for him. You fight to bring him home." So I rose, my tears drying into resolve. Edward thought he had won by turning my lost child against me. But he did not understand the heart of a mother. He did not understand that I would walk through hell itself to reclaim my son. My dear ones, if you believe a mother's love can outlast betrayal, can heal even the deepest wound, then write it below. A mother never stops fighting. And please, like this video, share it and subscribe. for Edward has summoned my darkest battle yet. He has turned my own blood into his weapon, but he has forgotten. Even the sharpest weapon can be turned back against the hand that wields it. My son, my firstborn, torn from me at birth, walked the halls of the resort like a stranger, yet with the blood of my veins burning in his every step. His presence was a storm inside me, joy that he lived, grief that he hated me, and fury that Edward had poisoned his heart. For days he would not look at me. He stayed near Edward, listening to his lies, feeding on his poison. I would pass him in the corridors, my hand reaching instinctively toward him, but he would turn away. Each rejection was a blade twisting deeper in my chest. Still, I refused to surrender. Each night I left letters at his door, letters filled with the truth of my youth, the truth of my pain. I wrote of how I was forced, how I wept every night after he was taken, how I prayed for him even after I built my new family. I told him that my love was not erased by silence, that he had always been part of me. For a long time, there was nothing, no reply, no acknowledgement, only the cold distance of his back as he walked away. Then one night, I found one of my letters, torn in half on the floor outside his chamber. A message clear as glass. I do not believe you. It broke me. My knees gave way, and I wept in the hall where any passerby could see. But I did not care, for a mother's tears are not weakness. They are war. Edward saw my pain, and he thrived on it. He prowled the halls like a king, boasting that even my own child had rejected me. Face it, Margaret, he sneered. Blood is not thicker than gold. He belongs to me now, and soon all of them will. But Edward underestimated me. He always had. One morning, as the sea mist rolled over the cliffs, I asked my lost son to walk with me. He refused at first, but something in my eyes must have caught him, for he relented. We walked the gardens in silence, the ruins of roses crushed by Edward's sabotage under our feet. Finally I spoke. You think I abandoned you. That is the lie Edward feeds you, because he needs your anger to make you his weapon. But I will tell you the truth, and whether you believe me or not, I will speak it, because you are my son, and you deserve to know. He did not reply. His jaw was set like stone, so I told him everything. Of the night I was cast out by my family, the shame forced upon me, the child torn from my arms. I told him of the years I wept, the prayers I whispered into pillows, the lullabies I sang to empty air. I told him of meeting his stepfather, the man who saved me, and how even then, I never stopped searching for a way to find him. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. You speak of love, he said bitterly. But where was that love when I needed it? Where was it when I cried in the night, wondering why my own mother did not want me? My heart broke all over again. I was there in spirit. I whispered, if not in flesh. Every tear you shed, I shed too. Every question you asked, I asked myself. You think I forgot you? Never. You lived inside me every day of my life. Look at me, my son. Do I look like a woman who could forget her own child? For a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt, softness. But then Edward's shadow appeared at the edge of the garden, watching us like a vulture. My son's face hardened again, and he walked away. That night, Edward struck harder than ever. He called a gathering in the hall, summoning guests, staff, even my family. He brought my lost son forward and proclaimed, Behold the true heir, the firstborn, abandoned, forgotten, but returned at last. This resort belongs not to Margaret, not to her pampered son, but to the one she cast aside. Gasps filled the hall. My son, the one I raised, stared at his brother in shock. My daughter-in-law smirked, sensing victory. And Edward, oh Edward, spread his arms like a conqueror. But I stepped forward. My voice trembled, yet it carried across the room. You call him heir Edward, but you do not speak of his heart. This resort is not stone and gold. It is legacy. It is love. It is sacrifice. An heir is not made by blood alone, but by the soul they carry. And you? I turned to my lost son, tears in my eyes. You carry my soul. Whether you believe it or not, Edward laughed. Soul does not pay debts, Margaret. Soul does not build empires. He is mine now and soon. So will this resort be. But for the first time, I saw hesitation in my lost son's eyes. He looked at Edward, then at me, then back again. Something in him was breaking. Something in him was beginning to question. Edward saw it too, and his smile faltered. That was when I knew. The battle was not yet won, but Edward had overreached. He had turned my pain into his weapon, but pain can also become a bridge. My son may not yet trust me, but a seed had been planted. And seeds, my dear ones, have a way of growing even in the darkest soil. That night, I returned to my chamber, lit a candle, and whispered to my husband's portrait. He is alive. He is here. And though Edward holds him now, I will win him back, not with gold, not with power, but with the truth of my love. My dear listeners, if you believe that truth always finds its way through lies, that love can outlast even the deepest betrayal, then type it in the comments. Truth will rise. And please like this story. Share it with someone who has fought for love against impossible odds. And subscribe, because Edward's grip is tightening, and the next chapter will be the hardest of all. The resort that had once been my sanctuary now felt like enemy ground. Every corner whispered with doubt. Some staff had sold their loyalty to Edward, taking his bribes. Guests muttered about scandal, fed by his lies. Even my own children hesitated when I entered the room. Edward had turned the place into a battlefield without a single sword drawn. His final strike came on a night when the sea thundered louder than I had ever heard it. He summoned everyone to the grand hall, his voice sharp with authority, his arrogance blazing like fire. He stood at the front with my lost son by his side, as if displaying a trophy. Tonight, he declared, the truth shall be sealed. Margaret has ruled this resort with sentiment and weakness. But her time is over. The rightful heir has returned. The investors are ready. The future is here. By morning, this resort will be mine, and those who stand against me will be cast out forever. The hall erupted in gasps, some fearful, some eager. My son, my second-born, looked at me with eyes full of tears. My daughter-in-law smirked, clutching his arm, urging him to surrender. And I stood tall, though my heart hammered like a war drum. Edward, I said, my voice steady, you have stolen loyalty with bribes. You have twisted love with lies. You have set fire to kitchens, trampled gardens, and poisoned minds. But there is one thing you cannot steal, he sneered. And what is that, Margaret? Your dignity? No, I whispered, stepping forward. The truth. Then before all gathered, I revealed what I had never revealed before. From a box I carried, I pulled the letters, my husband's last words, sealed in his hand, witnessed by his closest confidants. I read them aloud, each word echoing against the stone walls. My beloved Margaret, the letter began. If ever the day comes when our family is divided, let this be known. This resort belongs not to the hands of greed, nor to the lips of liars, but to the heart that has guarded it since the beginning. That heart is yours. You are the keeper of our legacy. You are the soul of our home. Gasps filled the hall. Edward's face drained of color. My husband's voice, though gone, had returned to strike him down, but Edward was not finished. His rage boiled over. He grabbed the papers, tore them, screamed, "Lies! All lies! She forged them. She deceives you all." In his fury, he turned to my lost son. Tell them she abandoned you, that she is no mother, that she deserves nothing." The hall fell silent. My lost son's eyes darted between Edward and me. His jaw clenched, his hands trembled. Finally, his voice broke the silence. "She did not abandon me," he whispered. Edward spun in shock. What? Tears welled in my son's eyes. She wrote me letters. She told me the truth. I wanted to hate her. I tried. But in her words, I felt love. In her eyes, I see pain. She is my mother. And you? He turned to Edward, his voice trembling with fury. You used me. You fed my wounds just to strike at her. You are no family to me. The hall erupted in cries. Some wept. Some cheered. My heart burst with both grief and joy. My child, the one I thought lost forever, had spoken for me at last. Edward staggered back, wild-eyed. His empire of lies crumbled in a single moment. He screamed, knocking over a chair, his face twisted with hatred. If I cannot have this resort, then no one shall. And with those words, he lunged toward the oil lamps lining the hall, intent on setting the resort ablaze. But he was stopped, not by me, not by my children, but by the very staff he had bribed. They seized him, furious, realizing he had nearly destroyed the place that fed their families, that held their memories. His own allies turned against him. He thrashed, cursed, spit venom at me. You think you've won, Margaret. You think love is stronger than power. One day you will see, love is weakness, and weakness always falls. I stepped close, my voice low, but strong enough for all to hear. And yet it is your power that has fallen, Edward. Love has outlived you. It always will. They dragged him out into the night. I never saw him again. The hall fell silent once more, but this time it was a silence of peace. My lost son came to me, tears streaming down his face. Mother, he whispered, the word fragile but real. Can you ever forgive me? I took his face in my hands, kissed his forehead, and held him to my chest. There is nothing to forgive. You are mine, always. Blood can be twisted, but love cannot be broken. The resort breathed again. The gardens bloomed once more. The staff returned to loyalty. And the sea, the sea sang softly at last, as if my husband himself sighed in relief. My dear ones, if you are still here, still listening to my tale, know this. The world will always have Edwards, people who hunger for power, who twist truth into lies, who burn what they cannot own. But in the end, it is not gold or greed that endures. It is love, love that fights, love that forgives, love that never stops. So I ask you, if you believe that love is stronger than greed, type in the comments, love always wins. And please, like this story. Share it with someone who has fought their own Edwards. And subscribe, so you never miss another story from my heart to yours. Because though my tale tonight ends, the truth of it never will. Love lives on, always,